So we want to bring in former NTSB Chairman Mark Rosenker. Mark, you were on the phone with us as the whole thing was unfolding, giving us some really good insight. Now the FAA has started the investigation, and they've been very sort of open about some of the things that they've uncovered. So what's been happening with the investigation so far?
It has moved along very nicely, Anne-Marie. The NTSB investigators have preliminary found that they have a blade, a fan blade that was in the number 13 position that broke as a result of metal fatigue. And so as a result of that, the FAA is looking to put out an airworthiness directive requiring the airlines operating this kind of engine to do an undestructive examination, which would be resulting in an ultrasonic kind of look at these blades to make sure that there are no signs of metal fatigue.
So these airlines have the equipment that would allow them to inspect the blades in this way? Because it seemed like this is not the sort of thing that you would pick up with the naked eye.
No, you would not be able to pick this up with the naked eye. This has to be done scientifically. It has to be done so that you can get into the metal itself and look at it without destructing it, without destroying it, of course. And the ultrasonic examination will enable you to do this. Typically, it takes about 2 hours per engine to look at this, and the requirement is coming down the line from the FAA to make this an examination that must be done.
So we've seen a number of videos from inside the plane, and social media has kind of pointed out that it looks like a lot of passengers were not wearing their oxygen masks correctly, that they weren't covering their mouth and their nose. I've been guilty of this, getting on the plane and the flight attendant starts going through the safety instructions and he's sort of zoned out because you've heard it a few times before or many times before. How important is it, just remind us, to pay attention to what those flight attendants are telling us?
Those flight attendants are there for your safety. Even though they're out there giving you beverages and food, their primary mission is to make sure you are safe aboard this aircraft, and particularly in an emergency. This flight crew was absolutely extraordinary in its performance. Clearly, the pilot and the co-pilot really took over and understood exactly what was necessary in order to bring this aircraft down safely and get every single one of the passengers off the aircraft.
I want to go back to this issue of metal fatigue. Southwest had a previous incident very similar to this one in 2016 involving engine failure. No one died and the plane landed safely. But why weren't there, or were there, I don't know, why weren't there inspections ordered at that time?
There actually were. Within a year or so of the examination, remember, you have to find out what actually caused the problem. And once they found out that this was metal fatigue on the particular aircraft that had that incident, the manufacturer put out what they call a service bulletin. Now, the service bulletin is a recommendation. It is not a requirement. But later, the European Aviation Safety Administration, their version of the FAA, put out an airworthiness directive. That is a requirement. But there was no real urgency. They gave them about 6 months in order to be able to require these inspections to be done. Now, I think you're going to find that the FAA's airworthiness directive will probably recommend or require a much more expeditious examination.
So meanwhile, just one day after Southwest midair explosion, a Delta flight had to have an emergency landing because there was smoke coming out of the engine. 60 Minutes did this story on Allegiant Airlines and, chronicling the mechanical issues and safety issues that airline has had to deal with and how the FAA has addressed those problems. Is there an overall problem here with the airlines, with the age of some of the planes that are flying and with safety in this country?
Well, certainly these two incidents have to be looked at very, very carefully. But when you put everything into perspective, it was 9.2 months, 9 years, 2 months that we have had fatality-free flying in the United States by U.S. carriers. That's quite a record. Last year, no airline had a fatality. So I don't think we're seeing the collapse or demise of aviation here. It is still the most safe mode of transportation in the world, the most dangerous aspect of your flight is still the drive to and from the airport. So put everything into perspective. We still have a very, very safe aviation industry in the United States. But with that said, complacency can't set in, and we must be understanding of any and every incident that occurs so that we can make sure that we keep a very, very safe aviation industry.
Right. Keeping in mind that, this is 2 incidents in a couple of years for Southwest that may, it seems at least preliminary, both of the incidents have to do with metal fatigue. Do you think that we could see some changes in the future in order to prevent incidents like this?
Well, we're going to learn from these 2 incidents. The NTSB is going to be meticulously, methodically looking at what really happened with these 2 engines. This engine has an incredible history of reliability. It's out there on many, many, many thousands of airplanes without incident, without accident. So we are seeing some potential issues as it relates to age. And the NTSB will be making recommendations, I am sure, and they may be doing it very early in this investigation, where typically they wait until the investigation is fully complete. If they find something that's unsafe that needs to be looked at immediately and changed, they will do that.
Yeah, that is one thing about the NTSB. They are always very open about the way the investigation is unfolding. Any information they get, they release it to the public almost right away, and they always do a very thorough job. Mark Rosenker, thank you so much.
Good to be with you.